Good morning, everyone. Hello and welcome to the Raise.dev Hacktoberfest Help Desk. My name is Joe and I'm the community manager here at Raise.dev. And I'm going to be with you twice today on this show, walking you through all of the wonderful guests that we have and helping make sure that you get all the help you need at Hacktoberfest today. So what is the show? What are we here to do? For the next hour and a bit, or hopefully a little bit longer, we're going to be chatting to a special guest today. We've got Florien Drees on the show. We'll be able to introduce Flor very shortly. And we're going to be helping you make Hacktoberfest contributions to documentation today on the show. So this show is all about helping make sure that you have a successful Hacktoberfest. Hacktoberfest is a celebration of open source where people are encouraged to make contributions to open source projects, maybe projects they haven't contributed to before or projects that they use regularly throughout the year, or maybe it's your first open source contribution and you're just trying to get involved. All of those things, October is the perfect time to do them, thanks to Hacktoberfest. So we're here 3 times a day, all throughout the month of October, helping you with various topics around Hacktoberfest to make sure that you can do what you want to do this October. So as I said, we've been joined by special guests today. We've got 2 other shows today, also joined by special guests. We'll talk about those at the end of the show, and I'll give you a little bit of a teaser for what's next to come. But before that, brief mention, how do you get your questions answered on the help desk? There are several ways to do that. First of all, you can always throw messages in chat. If you have questions at any point and you want us to answer them, throw them in the chat and we'll try and get to them before the end of the show. If you have a bigger question or like you've got a particular piece of code that you need help with, you can submit that to our help desk at raise.dev/Hacktoberfest. From there, you can even submit a issue URL. You can submit a pull request. So if you have an exact problem that you need help with, we can help you from that site. Just submit your question and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Other than that, our schedule for the rest of the week is up at twitch.tv RaiseDev's schedule. We'll be updating that on a week-by-week basis. So right now it shows the schedule for the rest of this week. We have loads of special guests on. So it's going to be an exciting week. And I can't wait to put up next week's schedule as well. We have equally jam-packed with guests. And then one final thing before we get on with the show. What is Raise.dev? Why do we do this show? Why are we interested in helping you with Hacktoberfest? Raise.dev is a pretty new service we only launched last week, and our mission is to help developers level up in their careers. So whether you're looking for your first job, your next job, you're trying to get a promotion, you're trying to change industries, you're trying to finish a project, whatever it is, we're here to help you achieve those goals and to bridge the experience gap. What is the experience gap? I hear you ask. The experience gap is this notion or this idea that our industry frequently demands things of people and levels of experience of people that they can't get without having the job. And you can't get the job without the experience, and you can't get the experience without the job. And you end up with this chicken and egg situation. So here at Raise.dev, we are trying to help you get the experience you need to level up in your career through working with expert coaches. We'll match you with a coach who will who will work with you on your goals. You'll meet with them, do some pair programming, that kind of thing. If you want to hear more about that, you can check the channel highlights as a video with our founder, John Britton, where he told us all about Raise.dev and where Raise.dev came from. That's on the highlights. And you can also find a blog post called Bridging the Experience Gap on our blog. Final thing on that, we're free whilst we're in early access. So you can get free coaching if you sign up today because we're in early access, and you can be an early adopter, help us test things out, help us kick the tires on this new project and see how it goes. So that's everything for me. That's my ramble. Just leaves me to introduce our guest for the day. So I'm very excited to add Flor Drees to the stream. Hi, Flor. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Yeah, very good. It's a morning stream, so I'm full of good energy. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers?
Sure. Hi, everyone at home. My name is Flor. I'm a program manager at Microsoft since almost 2 years now. We're going on 2 years. Can you imagine? What? I come from startups and open source and the Ruby community. I organize a bazillion tech conferences and events and
Yes.
meetups and workshops and all of those lovely things.
It's funny you mentioned that. I feel like we're very lucky to have you on the show. Like in some of the places we've been talking, you've been like, oh yeah, I was like emceeing this festival this weekend, and we've got our own stream this Friday. I'm glad we were able to fit you in between all of the other chaos that you're organizing.
It's organized chaos.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautifully organized chaos. It's just this DevRel October. It's always 1,000,001 things going on.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned the other day where they were like, "Oh, so you must have like really quiet time." And I'm like, October is always conference season. What? Like, what?
And this year we just moved it all online instead, and now it's like nothing has changed. Instead of planes, it's Twitch streams 24/7. It's great.
Well, I don't miss traveling by planes like at all.
No, definitely not.
I'm very happy with this.
I'm very happy to be at home with coffee and comfortable chairs and scented candles.
And your gorgeous view.
Exactly. My lovely canal. My canal doesn't look like this outside my window. Anyway, so today we are here to talk about documentation. So I guess to do a little bit of scene setting, Hacktoberfest has had a bit of a rocky start this year thanks to various spam issues, and as all good things on the internet have this happen to them eventually. And Matt and the team have done some wonderful things to get things back to where they need to be. But a side effect, some of the conversation we saw around last week was really unfortunate, I thought, because there was a lot of people who were discouraging documentation requests, documentation contributions and pull requests, seeing them as like low effort because of some of this behavior that we saw. So I was really excited to have you on the show because I know documentation is an area you're very passionate about, and I think we could give some great advice on how to make a valuable documentation contribution and what that could look like. So I guess,
as opposed to like removing a typo or like,
exactly.
Typo is okay, but like, yeah, trailing white space or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So typos, like we had a guest last week who made a good point that like a typo contribution, although it's tiny, like a single typo in a README can be the difference between like a command working and a command not working.
Well, yeah.
But we definitely saw like a lot of just said trading white space, weird changes to titles.
Yeah, we're adding an exclamation mark or something somewhere, or you're just like, yeah,
for sure. So I guess like that would be a good place to start. Like why is documentation important during this time of year? Like, why is it good that open source, like why is the documentation an important contribution to make for open source?
So I think it makes all the difference for someone to be able to onboard on the project, yes or no, if there is good documentation. I think there's this whole discussion, is it better to have like lacking documentation or no documentation at all? I don't like I don't know, but I'm happy whenever I see that people have taken the effort to sort of document their thinking process behind the project, and explain a little bit of the vision behind the projects, but then also like have all of these resources for people to get started with the project and learn more about it, try and find some tutorials and so on. So I think it makes all the difference for a project to be able to adopt new folks than rather not. And I think the cool thing is that for in terms of Oktoberfest, of course, that's even meta, because that could make the difference between someone thinking, oh, I could probably like contribute to this, or I could not.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and especially since like I said that like meta's a good term for it, because there's like a lot of meta documentation as well that is like sometimes underserved in projects like the contributing.md and like these files. That even now is like Hacktoberfest reminds everyone that like, oh, hey, I need to go update that before all these contributors rock up. Yeah. So you had a really interesting conversation with Carolyn Stransky. Is Carolyn? Yes. Carolyn, she's a software developer in Berlin.
In Berlin, yeah.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one step back, we started, and I mean a couple of sort of friends and colleagues from Microsoft. Yeah. But them working at Microsoft is just a coincidence. Like for sure. There's a couple of people that really care about open source, and don't get to do maybe a lot with it in the day-to-day, in their day-to-day job, and so. Hacktoberfest, and for us internally, it's like Open Source October. It's a wonderful excuse to do these type of things. And so we scheduled like a bunch of interviews with open source maintainers and core team members to talk about their projects and figure out like, hey, what kind of contributions are you actually looking for?
And this is contributing today, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Cool. Let me throw that in the chat for folks. Wonderful.
Yay. And so we've been collecting, or we've been doing these video interviews, like maybe 3 to 5 minutes, like really what contributions are you looking for? What kind of skills are you looking for? Turns out like a lot of folks are looking for, we need like visual assets and we need documentation and we need people to just go through the tutorials and give us feedback, like much more than code contributions. They're looking for those type of things.
Right.
And how as a contributor do I get even started with a project? And so we've done video recordings of that, and then we wrote transcript of those and posted them on Dev2, so people can consume the content in whatever way they see fit. And it was like a way for people to try and discover projects that they could get involved with. Because, I mean, you do a similar thing, right? Where you're like, what project even needs me?
Yes, for
well,
sure.
All of these, and by just watching a couple of interviews, maybe you find one that you want to commit to. Pun intended.
Oh no!
I don't know.
We need I need a soundboard.
I mean,
a pun klaxon going on.
I mean, you did say this is the morning show.
Yes, this is the
right?
morning show. We need to bring some high intensity morning energy.
I don't know.
So yeah, that's appreciated.
So anyway, through this, one of my colleagues in Germany, like my teammate, said, well, actually there is this person called Carolyn, and last year during Hacktoberfest, she wrote this wonderful blog post, and she did this project where she would go through the documentation of a couple of projects that she would use on a day-to-day basis, and look for condescending language and see if she could replace the condescending language. And condescending language being things like that we use as filler words, right? So simple or easy or just, and it can make someone who reads that feel like, oh, but I don't think it's easy at all. So probably this is not for me.
I'm sure we've all read documentation that's like, just use the monad and like this kind of stuff. Where it's and you're just it should be obvious that, and it's like, oh God,
or clearly.
Cool. Yes, yeah.
It's not clear to me. And so she did like I believe a dozen pull requests last year to projects that later got merged to replace or remove that language.
Awesome.
And so in her blog post, maybe we can pull it up.
There we go.
So this is the transcript of my or the interview with her. And so you can read a little bit more about that, and she sort of lines out these 4 steps. These 4 steps to do that, which I think are important. So she's saying like, first you want to open an issue, and even figure out if that's a contribution that the maintainer is welcoming or and also if they already use a linter, because step 2 is like maybe use a linter to flag those condescending terms, but maybe the maintainer is already using a linter, and you can just modify that to sort of include whatever stuff you want to be looking for.
I think that's a really important point that we've had a couple of conversations so far where like lots of people who are like even now are making contributions and getting negative reception to those contributions due to the problems last week, and getting them flagged as like invalid and that kind of thing. And like a really easy way to solve that problem is to like, give some forewarning about like how you're what you're trying to do.
Exactly. I'm thinking about picking this up. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that okay? And if it's not okay, like that's okay.
Right. And it saves everyone's time if you do that check beforehand, right? Like, because some projects, like they have different ways that they want contributors to be there and that kind of thing. And it's good to know that before you dive in and do all those changes, I guess.
Yeah. And so maybe we want to look at the linter that Carolyn suggests, because I think that's really cool. It's AlexJS. And you said that you hadn't heard of it yet. So I'm guessing there's more people out there
Yeah.
that don't
So I
know
guess for
this.
people who don't know, do you want to run briefly through like what a linter is and how you might use this?
So what AlexJS is doing is looking for a couple of, and the dependency itself has like this whole sort of library of words that you want to be looking for, and just flags them. And I mean, it doesn't replace it for you, or it doesn't like because that's the thing that you need to do, like right. It just flags it, and so then you can go in and be like, okay, well, this really needs to be there, or maybe this could be framed differently. And that's really useful.
Right.
I think it's very I mean, it's very tempting to just go in and replace everything, but sometimes like a word has a reason to be there, but maybe it can be framed a little bit differently.
Right. Yeah. So we got some examples here, like for example, like it's gone that framing differently, like master and slave. That's been a big topic for the last like in open source throughout the like recent Black Lives Matter movement. People have started to realize that we need to replace that language with things like primary and replica. So it's great that it picks that up. Removing gendered language is another great one. And then I love this. Don't use butt heads. It's profane. It's great.
So there's also like no replacement. Like they do suggestions, but here's
some things
like,
are just inappropriate. Get rid of them. Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah.
So this is really great. And Carolyn stresses also like maybe the maintainer doesn't want to install another dependency in the project, but you can always like use it for your own fork, for instance.
Yeah, run it locally and then just open the issues manually, which I think, sorry, wrong blog post, which I think, Carolyn goes into what we were just talking about, opening an issue before you start work. But yeah, awesome, cool. So then once you've run the linter, I guess you go straight into getting on the recommendations, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think the thing with opening an issue as well is you can figure out if they want to have sort of the whole bulk edit, or if they want to focus on certain segments, or only do a PR per segment of their docs. So that's all super great advice. And at the bottom of this transcript, I linked to the blog post that Carolyn wrote last year.
This one
that you have open. I'm like a cooking show. You have everything prepared.
Here's the blog post I prepared earlier. Yep.
Exactly. Well, we'll wait until like the oven is ready. Anyway, this goes into like even a little deeper and gives you a couple of examples.
What is condescending language?
Yeah, exactly, and gives you some replacement terms and so on. So this is really great. I mean, this has such an immense impact on the projects that we use on a day-to-day basis. So if the maintainers of those projects are open for this kind of change, awesome.
Actually, while we're doing this, actually we saw while we were doing issue safari yesterday, we were looking around. I actually found a project that has an open issue for docs. It's very similar to this, that's currently looking for contributors. So if anyone watching this is like, I want to go do that right now, Grafana is a cool dashboard observability tool. Like there we go. Remove vague link text. It's not quite the same. It's not condescending, but it's like on this topic of like, hey, here's a bad practice that we do over and over again in the docs that you could easly catch with a linter.
I love how you say here is a bad practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're like, pun number 2. So they have in their docs, they have a lot of this thing where like you've got a sentence that says like, oh, and you can find the link here, and then they link to it on the word here. So they want to replace that with like useful pointers, like you can find the link to document and then the document title. And so this is like, you could go about doing this in a very similar process to what Carolyn describes in this blog post. We'll get that in the chat as well. Wonderful. That's super cool. So you have been putting this into practice on a project at the moment, right?
Well, this I still have open. I did do something else. Do you want to talk about const.tech maybe?
Sure, yeah, let's do it. So const.tech, where have I got that open? There we go.
Exactly. So I use this website every day. Like I work on so many events and with so many events on a day-to-day basis. So I use this website all the time. To add events to it or to modify events. And I did a run like when the whole pandemic just started, right? And like a lot of events were canceled or postponed. And I just wanted to keep up to date with like everything that is still happening, yes or no. And so I did a whole run earlier this year to remove or update events that were not taking place anymore or would move online.
Yeah, we can see that number is pretty big now, 72 online.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I feel like, this is just from the people that contribute to this, right? Like there's so many more, 100%, but we need more people to look at this.
Right.
That's why it's up here, right?
I'm so glad this website exists, to be honest. Like we had this, there was like the golden age of discovering tech events was like when Lanyard still existed and worked and was around. And then like since Lanyard went down, it feels like there's been like 100 attempts at doing this. But this one is like one of the more, I guess like complete's not the right word, but like it's nice that it seems like it's active and there are lots of different communities behind it, but from lots of different countries rather than it being like siloed.
Yeah, exactly. And they do have a couple of bots. So like, for instance, the Ruby events come in from rubyconferences.org, is it? So, I mean, they're really trying to make this as sort of complete as possible. And I just really like this one because it's so simple. I said simple. Did you know that?
We need to Alex Linter for like speech.
For me, yeah. Anyway, it's very complete and I like it a lot. Yeah. But there was something that I was definitely missing, where if you go to like one event item, just if you scroll down a little bit,
it's like UXDX. Oh wait, that's not the item. Where do I go? Where do I go to?
I just want to see the yeah, exactly.
Oh,
is that I can't see from here whether or not they have a code of conduct. And that's 100% what I look at before I even consider,
right.
You know, like supporting or in Microsoft case, sponsoring events,
right? Sure.
Or sending our people there, right? Like we want to know that they arrive in a safe space. So I like a little while back, I sent them a message or opened an issue like, hey, maybe we want to add some sort of like check mark has code of conduct or something.
This issue.
Yes, and so that was in March, right? So that was when I was doing this massive sort of update with all of the events that had been canceled or moved online, and we had a little bit of a discussion in the issues. But then it was like, okay, yeah, we'll think about it. And now with Hacktoberfest was like, hey, so has any like. Have we thought about it?
Yeah, 4 days ago. There we go.
Exactly. Are we doing this?
Yeah. Which I've got to say, this is often like a pattern with open source, right? Like when you get an issue, it kind of ends with like everyone being vaguely in agreement, but like, then like someone needs to actually take the time to go and do it. So like one of the things as you're searching for issues this Hacktoberfest, like don't neglect the issues that were open like a couple of months ago, because there will be some issues that were kind of decided and are ready to go, but just haven't had anyone pick them up yet. This is a great example of that.
Exactly. Anyway, so we do a little reminder, and even I'm also like, oh, and I also want these other 2 things. So if you could also like do that, that'd be awesome.
Amazing.
But anyway, they implemented something on the sort of web form, because there's different ways.
See that if I add a contact?
Yeah, exactly. That's the form, right? So now you would need to link the code of conduct, and you can check the check mark if they have
sign language and closed captions. Very nice.
Exactly. So that was for the form. Then I asked, hey, what would even the markup look like for this, so that I can just like go ahead and start changing a couple. So I did a pull request this morning. Ta-da! So I just went through 3 lists, and that was for the DevOps conferences, general conferences, whatever that means, and Ruby conferences, and added the link.
So these were events that were already posted before those fields were live, and you've gone back and added the COs.
Exactly, for the ones that are still upcoming or have just like in this case for the 3rd of October just ended. So I've just updated those.
And there was a couple of other files in here as well, right?
It's a few. Cool. It's a few changes.
Right. Yeah. Very nice.
But it was. I mean, I think it was also a really good exercise where you notice a couple of things while doing this. First of all, like it's sometimes really not easy to find a code of conduct for an event. Sometimes they call it differently, like it's a harassment policy or they have different ways of calling the code of conduct, which is difficult. So it's difficult to automate this. I think. I mean, we could.
And there's also parts of like, there's some conferences where, I mean, as we were kind of discussing before the call, there's some conferences that are part of a wider network of conference, and so rather than having the code of conduct on the sub event site, it's like somewhere on the network site. It's like all the GitHub events used to do this, for example, where like there wouldn't be a GitHub Universe code of conduct. You have to go find like the whole GitHub code of conduct, which is makes it very tricky to find stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely, totally. That's totally true. And I mean, I also noticed while copying the URL over, I was looking through the code of conducts, and then I'm like, well, it's very sort of binary to say like, oh yeah, has code of conduct, but is it a good code of conduct? That's a whole like different piece. Do I even have ways to report if something unsavory happens? And do I know? How
they're going to enforce it and that kind of stuff. Like, does the code of conduct document enforcement, or is it just like the statement on its own?
Like, or they have this general email address that I need to send something to, and I'm just like, okay, so who is organizing the conference? So probably land with them. Am I happy with my complaint landing with them? Maybe not. I don't know. So so I was thinking, is that a good thing? Do we want to go more granular, or is that a me problem? And maybe that's something that I want to try and fight for. I also noticed that there's a lot of old versions of code of conducts around. So they still use, for instance, the contributor covenant for like 1.4. I mean, it's not bad.
What version
obviously
now?
2.0, I think.
Is GitHub up to date with that? If you create a new code of conduct in a GitHub repo, is it like?
That's a really good question. Let's have a look at it.
Just go find a repository so I can do this in. Here we go. We'll do open source goals since we're doing this with Brian later on. Add file. So if I do that, the magic button will come up. Doesn't even have a version number. Oh, 1.1.4.
Yeah.
So is that the latest one, or is that the new?
It's not. We're at. That's interesting.
Wait,
let's change that.
Where are the version numbers? Oh, 2.0. It says right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so even GitHub's default contributor covenant is out of date.
So maybe we want to change that. Where can we change that, Joe?
Oh well, luckily we've got a B Dougie is apparently watching. Brian, if you're watching, contributor covenant needs updating.
Just saying.
This I believe will live with the community and safety team, which is Ben Bolter's team. So
I mean, the covenant is still like, I mean, better 1.4 than nothing.
Nothing else. Like, it was perfectly acceptable 1.4. It's a great tool. So as you don't know,
maybe we get with the times and update it. But I've also seen like code of conducts for now online events that still reference like, oh yeah, physical if you have a complaint, you can go to the, one of the volunteers in the conference shirt. And I'm just like, how would I even see them if I'm online? Because they slapped that on.
That's
back
actually
in the
really
days.
Interesting point, because like there's. So a lot of these conferences, I guess, are like using different live streaming tools, and some of those, like Twitch, for example, you can tell if someone's a moderator, and it's got a list of moderators in the side. But there's like a lot of these tools are like I've seen a lot of kind of like home rolled platforms recently, and a lot of like all kinds of things that are using like Slack chat rooms and all these other tools that aren't set up for having visible staff and moderators, right? Like if you join a Slack, it's assumed everyone is staff. So how do you tell? I guess usernames. It's really tricky. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, for a couple of the online platforms, if we had a COC team, we would make sure that it's like your username is like your the name that shows is like your name, and then between brackets or whatever it would say like COC team or something.
Right.
Whenever there is no other way to make that very visible. But
I feel like helpful. I feel like I'm becoming mostly just like a Discord advocate. We were saying before the software we use to stream is called StreamYard, and Flor was joking that she should be a StreamYard advocate. I feel the same about Discord because I constantly talk about Discord nowadays, but Discord would be a good one for this because it has the roles. So you can have like a really cleanly signposted, like, hey, here's the COC role and team. Would be a good way of doing that. So I think it would be a good thing to pivot into kind of talking about this pull request itself in terms of like making a good pull request and like get like actually, you know, seeing that pull request through. Because as I said earlier, a lot of folks have had issues where their pull request like gets flagged when it is a valid contribution and that kind of thing, just because, you know, like maintainers are very overworked at the moment, well, in general, but especially at the moment. And so they're relying on certain signals. So like when you're making a new pull request and you want that pull request to be like well received and you want to minimize the work for the maintainer, like what kind of stuff do you look to include or do?
Yeah, so in this case, I mean, it might be cheating a little bit because they know me. They know
me
from my, you know, purge of the events earlier this year. But I try to still like because they have multiple maintainers, and so they might not all know about the one issue that I reference. But I try to like add a reference like, hey, we have a code of conduct marker now as per, and then link the issue, and try to be very explicit about, you know, like I've worked on the DevOps and the general and Ruby files.
Right.
And
sorry, I was just checking. So there's when we were doing issues for yesterday, we noticed a thing. So you can, when you like do these links, GitHub will pick up certain like language before the tags, so like fixes or closes, and then add it like up here. This may close it, but in this case, like it's appropriate that this doesn't close that one because you're updating code of conduct stuff. So that was a good use of
this
words
was just
before the tag. Yeah,
this was just a first sort of like try at it, and I don't want to close anything yet because I mean definitely not closed yet. And I also think I am adding some observations to it, so I'm like, this is still an ongoing conversation. Like I'm not done with y'all.
Yeah, which is actually another really good point. That like, I feel like a lot of people during this time of year see pull requests as like the end. So like, I've opened my pull request, I'm done now. That's like the contribution finished. When actually it's really the start of a conversation in a lot of ways. You can see we were talking about the reviewers of this project are really quick. Like this review was like instantaneous by the looks of it.
I mean, I think they're anyway really quick. Maybe it's also like it's a benefit of them knowing the person already. So I don't know, like, but I feel like they're like this all the time. Like they're very passionate about the thing, and they're quick in their response. So that's great. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to continue the work on this one, but also continue to have the discussion on this one because I still think that there's more that we can add. Maybe we can add like, hey, is the location even wheelchair accessible? Once we go back, I guess, to the in-person events again, or we have these hybrid events, then this becomes like.
I like your confidence. Once we go back to in-person events, it will happen.
Maybe, I don't know. I see some for the region that I work in. I see some of those hybrid events, you know, where they have like a viewing party somewhere, and it's like maybe I don't know, 20 people.
I really hope that sticks around. Like, the worst bit about I don't have to do as many events for my job nowadays, but the worst bit of that being my job was like just all the people who couldn't make it to the event for various reasons. So I really hope the online hybrid stuff sticks around. It's
no, definitely. I mean, as long as the sort of like the online experience is the premium experience, and then maybe you have a viewing party, and that's fun in itself. I don't think you need to do much more for that. Because I think people will just be excited. But people will just be excited that they can meet each other again, right? And so as long as you focus on the premium, like the online experience being the premium one, I totally see that happen. No, I don't see massive conferences for the foreseeable future, and I'm kind of glad.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper, more sustainable, I think. Just a reminder to people in the chat, a lot of people have joined throughout the stream. If you have any questions as we go along about what we're talking about, docs contributions, feel free to throw them in. Anything wider, also throw them in. We'll do our best. So speaking of docs contributions, you also raised something about Write the Docs and a project that they have going. That could be a good place for people to start.
Yeah, so
Am I
Write the
right?
Docs, they don't necessarily have something on for Hacktoberfest, but
Right.
we should totally yeah, I mean, if you don't know the Write the Docs community, this is a good opportunity to have a look at that.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this since I've been to their Berlin
Yeah.
conference, and this is a while ago, actually.
They have a Prague conference coming up like next week.
Yes. And I mean, really, this is so much fun. It's like a lot of discussion about, well, documentation, but also APIs and how do you like even onboard people and how do you do metrics for docs and how do you like, it's a super, I really like their conferences and their content. And a project that they did for their conference, I don't know the year anymore, but but my colleague Nitya told me about this.
I believe I have the tweet.
Oh, there you go. So it was the Portland one, and I'm guessing it was. Well, it was August. No. Well, they do a writing day. They do a writing day more often for their conferences, and that's really very cool. Where they set up these tables and people start working on the documentation for certain projects. And what they did for a couple of Microsoft documentation projects is really have a look at describing the UI of stuff. So, and having a look at accessibility of docs. And so maybe not write, click the button, but select the button because it's not ableist.
Right. It doesn't describe a particular like peripheral and like action and interesting.
And so I like that very much. I think that's a great and I love the concept of writing day because it's just this great moment where people can come together and they really focus on this one task and help each other and like make a big dent in sort of well, I mean, to make a dent in Microsoft documentation, you need like a lot of folks, by the way.
They mentioned a project that I have to find it. Yeah, and also actually we should go back to the Microsoft documentation as well because sorry, they mentioned a project that I want to find. I'll find it. All right, they mentioned the documentation manifesto. Oh, documentarian manifesto. I'm really intrigued by what this is and where I can find this. I'm sorry, I completely interrupted you. You were talking about you need a lot of people. You need a lot of people to.
Now I want to know it as well.
Yeah.
No, but I think so. That's a great thing, and they don't necessarily have something going on or something organized, maybe chaotically organized, like we discussed earlier, for Hacktoberfest. But that's what I mean. That shouldn't stop you from running with this anyway, and go through your favorite projects or the projects that you use on a daily basis and see if you can help them fix this. I think in our beautiful doc, Joe, I pasted a link also to the UI description for. No, I posted the tweet from Nitya from this event.
Was that another one?
And in that she references our description of UI elements because we have a lot of guidelines for our docs. I mean, mostly for our documentation in English. So that's another thing, right? Where documentation in English is usually like class citizen and documentation in other languages can use a lot of love.
Right. Yes, for sure. So there was a really interesting project recently that was doing something on that. I think it was a GitHub project. They just put out documentation for the new app in Spanish and Portuguese, I think. Anyway, so this is the interaction style guide is the piece of work that you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, and have a look at, and maybe you can use that when looking at these projects, or create your own tiny little linter, maybe, or see if Alex could pick up some of these things. So I think this is really interesting, and now also the languages and the different translations, because we've noticed just from looking at some Microsoft documentation and Microsoft Learn. I mean, I really love both resources. I think it's great stuff. Really great stuff.
I'd actually love to talk about Microsoft Learn a little bit. So go on.
But we noticed that for some translations, like roles in Learn are only in the male version of the role.
Interesting.
for a lot of European languages, so like Spanish and
gendered
French
languages,
and
yeah.
German, it's all gendered because there aren't or there are guidelines for these languages as well, but they don't pick up on this because it's just not something that people for the English language docs had to even think about because roles are not necessarily gendered. I mean,
how is this list alphabetized? There we go. Here I am pretending I read Spanish. But yes, it's
good for
also
you.
super. Wait, hang on. Do all of these languages work with Learn?
We have like a lot of translations.
What?
I mean,
wild. That's all of the languages you support. That's so many.
It's cool, right? I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
But
super cool.
I mean, a lot of them still need. I mean, they're maintained, but they could probably still use some pairs of eyes going over there and really figuring out, because there's still definitely some mistakes here and there. I mean, we've had a ton of fun about some of the sort of technical terms that are translated by probably an agency and that don't necessarily know what, I don't know, serverless means, or
they don't have the Azure specific subject knowledge and that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So sometimes the translations are hilarious.
Which is a really interesting thing. So I want to talk about the reason I find this really interesting in relation to Learn is like when you talk about documentation as like static files in a repository, like that's one thing, but like Learn is like full guided educational experiences, right? Like these are courses with like interactive UI and stuff. Like how do those look on the back end when you're like doing this maintenance work? Do they live as like markdown files in a repo somewhere? Like, is it easy to update? I imagine just because it's so much harder to get to like say like step 4 within a course through the UI, it must be comparatively more difficult to find places where work is needed.
Yeah. So, I mean, if people want to have a look at docs or Learn, I would say have a look at docs, and then you can, the English docs are open source. That's been our struggle also, that a lot of the translated docs aren't open source. So that's not too easy to.
That's not the one. Is it under Azure?
So Learn, like Microsoft Learn, is not.
Oh, I see the docs. Yeah, sorry. So there is the Azure. Yeah, there is the Azure docs. Yeah. Yep. This one. Cool.
Exactly. So that you could definitely take a look at. But there are really good guidelines that they're following. Is mainly for the translations, that it's something that definitely needs work, and that we're trying to advocate for, and also try and get all of those open sourced so that other people can join in there as well. I mean, we have this MVP program, the Microsoft Most Valued Professionals. They contribute a lot to our open source projects and to all of our work, so that they could get involved, right? And then it could really then you could really start making a dent in this work. But yeah, no, I am actually authoring a couple of Learn modules right now, so it's not as easy as a markdown file somewhere on GitHub. That'd be amazing.
I'm super fascinated by how that works, but I imagine there's parts of that you can't talk about. But
no, but I'm still hoping that, you know, as soon as more people come onto these projects that have to then first been onboarded before they can actually start to help out, that maybe at one point this becomes such a strain that they are like, okay, fuck it, let's do this differently.
Change this system up a little bit. Interesting. I've also just realized, like, I hadn't looked at the table of contents while we were talking about this, but like there's a lot of really interesting style guides in here. Like, is this style guides around like writing for bots? It's super cool. This is like really valuable content. And there was another one in that list of the accessibility stuff that was also really interesting. A list on writing step-by-step instructions. This is great. This is super. This is like, folks, if any of you are writing documentation, this is a very valuable resource I had no idea that exists. That looks amazing.
This is really, really good. I like this as well. And so we need to go through this before we even start authoring for the Learn modules, which is, I really like this.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It's I work quite a lot with a technical writer who does a lot with Write the Docs, and the stuff he produces is just incredible, and anything from that community is wonderful. So if you're interested in docs and the art and craft of writing docs, I highly recommend getting involved there. Super cool. Awesome, cool.
Sure.
So I think that's the end of our wonderful tour of links that you've sent me. While I've got the screen share up, is there anything else you want to dive into? Anything else?
I'm sorry, I just gave you like a bookmark thing. Like,
oh no, it was so useful. It was really great. And now I've selfishly got all these links for myself. I don't have to. Usually when some people might have seen me like saving things to Pocket as we go, I have to do that a lot with guests because they bring up so many useful resources. But these ones I have the links for. Rad. So I'll remove the screen share. Cool. So yeah, you've got your code of conduct pull request open now. So is comps.tech, are they participating in Hacktoberfest?
I don't know if they actively opted in.
Yeah. Well, we did have a look at, as I always said, if you're looking for docs contributions, you can watch a video from yesterday that's in our recordings. Issue Safari, episode 1 of this, Issue Safari See and Go. We find a bunch of repositories that have docs stuff open. So if you're looking for your first pull request, you'll be able to find that pretty easily. I believe someone just tried to post a link in a well-meaning way and got banned by the bot. Sorry, Rick. Let me post that link that you tried to share. Here you go. So Rick was answering a question we just had in chat, which was, I'm new to GitHub and have been using TFS until now. Haven't gotten used to the command-based source control management process or GitHub itself. Do you think that it's possible for me to contribute to Hacktoberfest this year? And Rick posted a website with a video, which is apparently helpful, prtracker.net. Have a look at that. And yeah, absolutely.
Also, Rick is an MVP. Hi, thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Wonderful. Yeah, that's super helpful. And yeah, there's a whole heap of resources for getting started with GitHub. Actually, let me do a screen share again and point you out some things. So like the GitHub getting started guide is always really useful and easy. So they've got their Hello World guide, a relatively new resource that's super easy or super fun is lab.github.com. So this is a bot-driven learning course. So what it would do for you, Ashish, is set you up with a repository on GitHub, and then a bot will come in and give you instructions, and you'll basically do a course whilst following along with the bot. So you'll do everything that you need to do for Hacktoberfest. It will have you open an issue. You want to do the introductions to GitHub 1. It will have you open an issue, it will have you making a pull request. It will have you doing what's called the GitHub flow, and that's all you need to contribute to Hacktoberfest this October. And as Rick said, this link that's up on the screen now, the video has a how to submit your first PR to GitHub documentation, which sounds perfect. Let's open that up right now and find that. This one, Rick? I'm guessing so. So let me grab the link to that. There we go. Thank you, Rick. That's super, super useful. So rad. Love to answer a question on the way. So I hope that helps, Ashish. If you have any further questions, you can drop them in chat, or you can, if you get stuck along the way, you can send us an email, or you can submit those questions here. Rad. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Flor. This is, I think, a really useful summary of all the ways that people can contribute to documentation this year, and some of the best tips. I think the really interesting thing to me about Carolyn's interview and Alex and the blog post you pointed us to is like, it's not just a way of finding docs contributions, but like a way of like generating them, which is one of the struggles sometimes with Hacktoberfest, which we covered a little bit yesterday, is finding issues that haven't already been claimed by people, right? Because there's so many people trying to contribute right now. So being able to like run that linter and find things that need fixing, and then say like, hey, can I fix this in the project, is
exactly, because you have an example right away in your like issue, like, oh yeah, I've like, I don't only assume that this is necessary, but look.
Right. Yeah, awesome. So before we let you go, is what's happening? Is contributing today happening this week as well?
So there's events all through. So we had a little primer sort of kickoff, Hacktoberfest kickoff event last Friday. Cool. You can probably watch the recordings of most of those sessions on that YouTube channel, but also on the website. Like the website sort of like collects all of the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah. So it's a very good URL. Who got the URL? Who was responsible for that?
I think it was Susanna on my team. So we were talking about contributing.md as the file, obviously, and then got this link. So yeah, I think it's a great one. And naming things is hard, as we discussed when we were not on yet. And this is one of those things. So there's interviews there. There's probably the recordings of the sessions that were on like last Friday, and now every week we have a sort of a follow-up event with friends of ours at the ING. Will you believe it?
Cool. Very good. For those who have no idea what we're talking about, Flora and I both live in the Netherlands, and ING is a bank here.
And with an orange logo is a very important tidbit of information. And so they do sort of follow-up events and highlight an open source project, but also talk again about like how do you get started with open source even, or what is Git, or how I think there's one on GitHub Actions as well, and so on. So like we have a couple of things throughout the month of October, and a lot of user groups that you of course adapt their sort of like monthly meetup to be a little bit more about open source. And because I come from the Ruby community, there's one more thing I'm gonna plug.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'll
please plug away. This is plugging time.
So on the 23rd of October, I want to run another ROSConf, and ROSConf stands for Ruby Open Source Software Conference. Where we invite a couple of maintainers of the projects. They pitch their project, then they're available for an Ask Me Anything, and then the rest of the day is dedicated entirely to contributing to the project. We limit the amount of people that can join and contribute per project, because otherwise, so the main site is really ugly. You want to go to the remote, like you want to click on the remote thing, like
the remote thing.
Like,
oh, this is the site for the subsite. Though I will say this is Katrina Owens, who is amazing and runs a really cool project called Exorcism.
I mean, we had for the previous, so we ran 2 events in 2015 in Vienna and in Berlin, and we ran one in Amsterdam in 2018. And so now we run the remote version, because actually that doesn't really matter so much. I mean, it's nice to be in the same room, but it's not entirely necessary. So we'll use Discord for the AMAs, so people can connect over Discord. Yes. So, you know, like we'll use StreamYard and Discord. So both of our faves. And we have a couple of projects on already.
Ruby format. Oh, Penelope, the maintainer of Ruby format, is coming on the show tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll have a couple of, Jamstash is really cool as well. So we'll have a couple of projects on, and people can contribute to those projects during the day. And we'll do a report out at the end, like how many, for the previous editions, we had like so many pull requests sent, but also issues just triaged, or tutorials edits. Like there's really a cool it's a cool event, and I'm very much
no
looking
idea that
forward
Ollie did. Is the Ollie I'm thinking of? Sorry, I'm now just having like.
If you're thinking Ollie, then yes.
I had no idea that Ollie did Ruby. I've known Ollie for years, and I had no idea he did Ruby. Cool. Okay. Oh, I think I met him in the context of game development. Why didn't I know he did Ruby? Anyway, this sounds like a super rad event. And so it still says here channels to be decided, but I'm guessing people will totally sign up for that soon. Awesome. They're decided, and the sign up, or would it be a sign up thing, or just like a link that people can show up to?
There will be a sign up where we like really just revived this, and this is coming up. So mark your calendar and
keep an eye out for it. I'll post this in the chat.
Exactly. If you're into Ruby, then this will be fun.
Yeah, I feel like I need every guest we've had on has come from PHP and ended up in Ruby, or is just a Ruby person. And like yesterday, as you saw, people had me reading Ruby code, and I think at some point to continue running the stream, I'm just going to have to learn Ruby.
There's no other way.
I have no idea what's going on. Yeah, absolutely have to become a Ruby person.
Oh my gosh, I come from PHP as well. This is really
it's literally a thing. All of our guests start in PHP. It's the show trajectory. If you didn't start in PHP and you want to be on the show, we really need some help broadening our guest panel.
Yeah, I do feel if I say like I come from PHP, I mean that basically means that I, removed stuff from WordPress and then added new stuff and watched it work or not work. But
forums and WordPress is like the gateway path for web development for sure. I think my first ever contracted job was writing modifying a WordPress theme. Good times.
Exactly.
Anyway, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, and I'm looking forward to contributing today, this Friday, and for this to come out. And yeah, all those links are in chat. If anyone loses any, oh wait, I posted that link in the wrong chat. That's not very helpful. Now all those links are in chat. If anyone loses any of those, you can find it in the chat log, or feel free to ask if there was something in particular that you missed. So yeah, thank you so much, Flor.
Thank you.
And thank you for being on the show. I will now do our outro thing, so I'll send you backstage. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Awesome. So thank you again, Flor. That was wonderful. And I think we covered some really useful resources that hopefully address some of the fear of documentation this Oktoberfest. So as Flor said, you can find the wonderful Contributing.today event that Flor and crew are working on. And also there, I think I posted, they've got a Dev2 community called 4Devs, also has a Twitter where a lot of this stuff is happening. Let me quickly post those links in. Where like that's where those transcripts are being posted and this kind of thing. So you can find all of those resources as well. So what's happening for the rest of the day on the show? So that was our first show of the day. We have 2 more shows today. The next one will be on in about 2.5 hours at 4 p.m. Central European time. I need to learn what CEST stands for. Central Eastern European Standard Time. It can't be Eastern. Central European Summertime. There we go. 4 p.m. CEST is the next show. 10 a.m. EDT. That is with Brian Douglas, who is apparently hanging out in the chat, though that would be like ludicrous time in the morning. So I hope he's not genuinely hanging out in the chat. So our next show is going to be Brian Douglas, developer advocate at GitHub. Brian runs an awesome project for onboarding contributors called Open Sourced. Source as in like ketchup, as in like, you know, food source. I signed up for it a couple of months ago after I saw it. I was very late to the game and hadn't seen it, and was very excited by what I saw. So Brian's going to come on to talk about open source, and he's also going to walk us through some of the issues that are open on open source if you're looking for a project to contribute to. And we'll hear a little bit about his journey. Brian and I worked together briefly while he's still at GitHub, but I was at GitHub as well, and he's fantastic. And he's also been doing some really good video content recently. His YouTube has an aesthetic that I'm very into. So all of that to come in a couple of hours. And then this evening, really excitingly, sorry, someone was just banned again. Was this a genuine ban, or were you trying to post something good for everyone? Sorry, Flor. We got Flor banned. There you go. Flor is pointing everyone at contributing.today. If you're a maintainer or know a wonderful maintainer, you can join their show. So get in touch via contributing.today. You can find, I believe, the contact details on the site, Flor, if people want to get involved. Where should we send people? If you want to be on the show. Twitters, there we go, on Flor's Twitter, which is, I believe, Florien Drees. It is Florien Drees. There you go. Boom. There you go. And so if you want to be on Contributing today, if you're a maintainer or you know a maintainer who should be on it, you now know where to go. So yeah, Brian Douglas, 4 p.m. European time, 10 a.m. US time. And then this evening, I get the night off because I will be watching our very exciting stream with the maintainers of Forum, the Dev2 project. If you haven't heard of Forum, first of all, have you heard of Dev2? Dev2 is a wonderful blog. We've spoken about it a bit today. Thanks, Matt. We've spoken about Dev2 a little bit today. Dev2 is like a wonderful blog, community site. Let me bring that up. It's like a wonderful community site for developers and people who are interested in developing things. There's like all kinds of blogs posted here. There is nearly 500,000 developers on here. There are job listings, there are chat rooms, all kinds of really awesome stuff. The raise.dev blog is on here as well. Really wonderful site. And what Dev did was they took this software and was like, actually, this is useful for all kinds of communities. And they open sourced it as the Forum project, which I believe is in the footer, if I can get to the footer. I can't get to the footer. Forum? Yes, they open sourced it as the Forum project, which is, like, as I said, the software that powers Dev2, and you can sign up to use it for your own community. And whilst it's also accepting contributions right now, it's got Hacktoberfest. So some of the developers for Forum are going to take over the show this evening whilst they work through Forum issues. We've got Nick, who's a senior engineer on Forum, and also Christina, who is their open source community manager. Christina's joining the show because she is an expert in accessibility, so I hear, and is going to be walking Nick through some accessibility features for Forum and the Forum software. So that's going to be super cool. They are actually going to be joining us regularly. The Forum, the Dev2 team and the Forum team are going to be joining us, I think, every week. There's 1 week so far we haven't got a show locked in, but they're going to be joining us at least once a week. So that's going to be a great place if you're looking for a big like Ruby on Rails app to contribute to. That's going to be a super neat show, and that's at our 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time show, the 10 p.m. European time show. So that is what's coming up for the rest of today. In terms of the rest of the week, you can find our schedule at twitch.tv/raisdev. So let me bring up my spoiler sheet. So tomorrow in the morning, we've got Sanskar Jeffy in the 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time slots. That's this shot slot. We've got Penelope Fippen, as we mentioned from whilst we were looking at Floor's conference. Penelope is known for a whole bunch of cool Ruby open source. If you're into testing, Penelope used to maintain RSpec. Now she's working on Ruby format. She'll be joining us tomorrow at the 4 p.m. European, 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time slot. And in the evening, we've got Andrew Serrod, and I'm very excited for that show. Andrew is a data product lead at Experian, but also runs one of my favorite tech communities in the world, Tech Nottingham. And we're going to be talking about kind of like the communities around open source and how you can be a good community member. Tech Nottingham does some of the most delightful tech events I've ever participated in. And so if you are interested in doing any like tech community building or that kind of thing, that's going to be such a valuable show. We will definitely talk about Andrew's famous pink jacket as well. So that's what's coming up tomorrow. The rest of the schedule, as I said, is at this website. And I'm going to do a little bit now because it's been raised that people may not be understanding how to ask us questions for the show. So I want to make sure I describe that really clearly. So this show, as I mentioned, is the Raise.dev Hacktoberfest Help Desk. We are here to help you with your Hacktoberfest questions. And those can be really broad, high-level questions like, how do I get started with Hacktoberfest? How do I find a good project? How do I do a pull request? Help, I don't know Git. Where and how do I learn Git? Those kind of like really big picture, how do I get started questions, all the way through to very specific issues. So like, say, for example, you are working in an actual repository, you found an issue you want to work on, you've started writing the code and you've gotten stuck, maybe on a bug, maybe on an error message, and you don't know how to get past it. We can also help you with those. And how it works is you go to raise.dev Hacktoberfest. In fact, let's show it. So you go to raise.dev Hacktoberfest, and on this site, you'll see a couple of things, including the stream. Let's mute that. You see subscribe for updates where you can get notifications when the show is live, but then you've got the readme.md where you can get help from the help desk, and you click submit a question and that will walk you through the form. And on this form, you tell us what you need a hand with. So we ask you what you stuck with, what's confusing, where do you start? So I'm stuck on an issue. Wait, I can't type. Help, I'm stuck on an issue, and then you give us that URL of that issue. So if it's a particular issue, you just post in the GitHub link, whatever it is. If you've already started on the code, so say you found the issue and you've already started on the code, you might have already forked the repository, or you may have already made a branch in the repository. You can link us to that URL as well. So you can link us straight to the code you've already worked on, so we can have a look at the code you're working on, and then you can tell us what technologies are involved. This is super helpful because it means that we can match you with a guest who knows that technology, and so we'll give your question to someone who can help you the best. For example, I won't be answering your Ruby questions. Our wonderful founder, John Britton, who is a Ruby on Rails expert, will be answering your Ruby questions, or someone like Floor, who knows Ruby, for example. So once you've submitted that, we ask you a couple of questions about you, how we can contact you, your name, that kind of thing, and whether you want to receive updates on the show. And so what happens then, once you've submitted your question, is we will contact you to tell you when your question will be answered on the show. So we'll tell you like the time and the day it will be answered. And if you can't tune in live, we'll send you the recording. So after the show, we send you the recording where we answered your question. So you get to ask a question, you get it answered live on air by a wonderful and expert guest, and then we make sure that you get the answer direct to your inbox as well. So that's how you answer a question to the Raise.dev Hacktoberfest help desk. We are taking questions all throughout the month. where we don't have questions, we're kind of answering around the topics. So today we did documentation, for example, because that was something that is like we've seen lots of people struggling with. Yesterday we had a look at how to find good issues and stuff. So we'll be varying things up throughout the month. You'll get some days where we're answering questions, some days where we're doing other things. Which brings me to the final thing I want to do before I start wrapping up, which is we're here all month. We have, I think I worked out yesterday, 18 more days of shows to do, 3 shows a day. What do you want to see? Who do you want to see? We've got loads of guests lined up for you, but also we still have some free slots. So there's a couple of days where we can just do whatever. I think the 19th of October is looking like a day where you're just going to be stuck with me having a good time. So if there's something in particular that you want to do or that you want to see on the show, let us know. You can contact us at contact@raise.dev. You can find me on Twitter at JNA_SH. What do you want to see on the show? How can we help you the most? We're here for you first and foremost. So if there's something we could do that could be better for you, we want to know. So yeah, that's all from this episode. As I said, we'll be back in about 2.5 hours. Raise.dev, as a final wrap up, we are here to help you take the next step in your career, whether that's your Hacktoberfest contribution or changing jobs or finding your first developer job or getting a promotion, anything like that. Those things are hard. They require experience. They require like plans and confidence and then getting and finding the next step. Our expert coaches can help you with those things, and we are free whilst we're in early access. So if you help us out during this early access period by helping us kick the tires on this new project, Raise.dev is free for you. We'll get you matched with a coach for your kickoff call. Our coaches have been doing kickoff calls all week. We actually onboarded 3 new coaches yesterday, and they all seem like wonderful folks. I'm very excited for them to start seeing the output from their matching with people. So yeah, you can sign up for Raise.dev and find out more about coaching at Raise.dev. And if you go to raise.dev/blog, you'll find a blog post called Bridging the Developer Experience Gap, which is kind of like our founder's story about why he started Raise.dev and about the problem that we're trying to solve. You can also find that on our videos page on this channel. There's a highlight called Bridging the Developer Experience Gap, where we talk with John about like where Raise.dev comes from and why coaching is useful. If you liked what you saw today, you could drop us a follow, and that'd be super useful. And additionally, once you follow, there's a second button, a little bell that you can press if you want notifications. And other than that, you can also get notifications from us via the Hacktoberfest, the Raise.dev Hacktoberfest site, or by following us on Twitter. We post out notifications about the show very regularly. So that's finally a thing from me. I will see you in 2.5 hours. Thank you all so much for being here. Catch you at the next one.